This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is Ghost of War, directed by Bress. And this movie reminds me of a Seinfeld episode.
Smooth the head down to nothing, stick a pumpkin under its arm, and change the nameplate to Ichabod Crane. All right, that's it for me. You got everybody.
But this one meeting, he was just perfect. Everything landed, especially his jokes. And you know what he did? He gave his goodbyes and left. Why did he do that? Because he was well aware that it was never going to get any better. And in fact, it was going to get worse. What's the point of that anecdote, you might ask? Well, because, as I said, I just saw Ghost of War. And it starts off very much in the vein of movies like The Big Red One, which is to say, it takes place in World War II. The Big Red One took place in World War I. But this takes place in World War II, and you have a group of soldiers who are patrolling Nazi-occupied France, if I recall. And they're sent to this manor, a palatial manor in fact, by the Allied command and told to keep watch on it. There are a bunch of men there prior to their arrival, and they want to leave really badly. Now keep in mind, I said this place is palatial, and I'm not kidding. It's a huge manor, but everyone in the crew notices that these guys seem a bit too happy to leave, but no one makes any kind of real notice of it, which is odd to say the least. Though we come to learn that ghosts of war are literally ghosts, and this manor is haunted. Now, this is an interesting idea. I really enjoy war movies, particularly those set around World War II and Vietnam. And so I was really buying into this concept right off the bat, though there are some problems with it, quite a few in fact, some of them extremely significant. First off, if this movie had stayed with that concept, which is to say a bunch of soldiers in occupied France having to deal with ghosts, that would have been interesting and would have put it in the vein of movies such as Death Watch, Jacob's Ladder, and there's one other, it's a Korean movie. It's really good, but it doesn't come to mind at the moment. Though it would have been quite enjoyable just with that, adding literally nothing else to the mix. But no, we can't have that, can we? So, Bress, who wrote as well as directed the movie, makes things more complicated than they need to be. Which isn't to say it's bad. In fact, I would not criticize the execution well, it's a little jump scary, way too jump scary in fact, and it lacks nuance, which, considering the subject matter, almost comes naturally, or it should at any rate. So that's a problem, but the thing is, its problems aren't anything that can be considered ruinous by any stretch. Its greatest problem is, as I said, its structure, in the sense that it adds a totally unnecessary and unwarranted M. Night Shyamalan twist to things, which doesn't really make sense, and in fact, the more you hear about it, the less sense it makes. And I have to say that this movie, at least I want to say the first half, maybe a little more, is really interesting. Kyle Fellner, Brenton Thwaites, Billy Zane. It's got a really good cast, and they act really well. Oh yeah, Theo Rossi from Daredevil and Son of Anarchy, always a great actor, and he's pretty good here as well. Though no one is vying for an Academy Award. But it's well done. As I said, it gets pretty jump scary, which is irritating. And Bress, as a director, seems to have this tendency to have things happen in the background while characters in the foreground are unaware of them. At first, this is interesting and it's kind of creepy, truth be told. But by the third or fourth time it happens, if you're me, you're rewinding it, seeing if you saw what you thought you saw, and you go, ah, that's interesting. You shrug and move on. It's overdone and it becomes less effective every time you see it. And in fact, my greatest problem of all with this movie is that it starts off so promisingly, and in the name of high concept, and that's what this is, it's very much a high concept movie, it loses itself, it loses its direction, it loses everything worth, I think, watching it for, to be totally honest with you. And that's a pity. It's like it's caught in this whole matrix of not very good decisions, none of which ruin it, but really do it no favors. When I first started watching this movie, we learned that the troop of American soldiers are pretty brutal people. I mean, they don't think twice about shooting an injured person in the head, not even a second. And so that's interesting because you have a contrast. You know that they're fighting Nazis, but these are just, I don't know, remorseless men. They do not care. If you're in the way of their mission and you're perceived as an enemy, no matter what state you happen to be in, they will kill you. If you're not dead already, you will soon be. They're ruthless and they are just without remorse. And that's fascinating because, as I said, you get this contrast. You don't need to see the actions of the Nazis to know they're bad because Nazis. So to see such, I want to say vindictiveness, but that's not quite the right word, but to see such steely, remorseless determination on the side of the Americans is an odd thing. It's not something you typically see in war movies, and there's very little to counter it in this one. So when the ghosts start appearing, I was more worried about the ghosts, to be totally honest, than these men, because they do not take shit from anybody. They do not play. And if bullets or knives can kill a ghost, these ghosts are so screwed. But of course they can't. And these men are rendered helpless. The movie is clever, though, in some respects. For instance, you may ask yourself, why didn't they just leave? A question movies revolving around haunted buildings typically don't work very well in answering. Here, it's pretty clever. Their mission is to guard that building until reinforcements come. Now, Allied intelligence tells them that there's a troop of Nazis coming through this area, so they have to protect this building. They don't quite know why, but they're also soldiers, which is to say, you order, we do. So they just go about doing it. So they could leave and risk court-martial or stay. So for most of the movie, they do just that. And things get progressively weirder and progressively jump scarier, which, as I said earlier, not a fan of. But that's a movie in and of itself. That's enough. You don't have to do any more in terms of story. But once again, we can't stop. We have to add in more stuff. And it gets borderline ridiculous. And by the way, I mentioned Billy Zane as part of the cast. If you see the movie, he dies really early. He has, I think, if it's 5 minutes of screen time, I'd be shocked. Though there's a point to that. And it's Billy Zane. Just think on that a minute. In any case, it's not a bad movie, but it's a badly structured movie. And I know how it could be fixed really effectively and would make it not only make more sense at the last section, but a lot more satisfying on the whole. But I can't tell you that, because to tell you that, I would have to reveal the secret, so to speak, of the last section of this movie. And as lame as it is, I don't think that's fair. After all, you might like it. I don't see how, but you might. So, if you have some time on your hands, give Ghost of War a chance. It stands up pretty well the first 2 acts and kind of stumbles and falls flat in the third. But it's not bad. And as I said, with a few structural tweaks, this could be a really excellent movie. As it stands, it's an interesting diversion. It is such a... All I can tell you is this. Don't get too married to what comes in the first 2 acts. That's all I can say. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow. Peace.